YOLO composing gloves here. And today I just want to show you a pretty important role of the attack knob. The attack knob is pretty useful in changing the way a sound stylistically plays. It's got some interesting things to do with phase that can oftentimes have an impact on the way this takes place. So I have here a sound that is built around the phase relationship. This phase knob is going to move around and it's being automated here. And based on its position, it will change the way the attack sounds on the note. So if I play just this first little bit for you, it's kind of loud. 3, 2, 1. And if I were to just, like, for example, let's just move this up here. Versus. You see, so it's quite just a huge variety of sounds as possible with this. And so I don't want to get too focused on that. What we want to look at is how can we influence this. So if we have a stereo sound, the phasing will be less affected. But if we make it mono, we'll get a more affected sound. And that will lend more power to the attack knob on the envelope. So if I play it without an envelope, we'll get just these really sort of crisp forward attacks. And if I turn it off, I have got this attack, so it's going to fade in and give it, I think, a little more clean of a texture. You may not like that, but I actually quite like that a bit more. Now, if I change the amplitude to a sound where this might be a bit more noticeable, so if I change that, I get this. It's quite an astounding difference. It's like, whoa, that little move quite changes that. And it's because it's going through distortion, and distortion really cares about the input signal. So if I change the phase as a permanent offset to that, that would have an impact on our sound quite dramatically if I affected the that harmonic's phase, because that would change the amplitude. So if I bring this, if I like turn this off, now if I turn it on, you will hear the phase be removed to a degree at the beginning of the note because it's still fading in. And I could even give it a curve to make that a little more severe. And you see we get a lot more subdued of a texture, which may be something we want for our track. It just depends. See how forward that is? And so we could attribute that. It makes sense because, I mean, intuitively, we're taking off the front of the note. So that's what we'd expect to happen. But more than that's just happening. It's because we've modified the phase relationship as it enters our distortion. And that's why we're avoiding those clicks and pops. Or not really clicks and pops, but brutal attack. We can also affect this using something else. So if I bring this back to where it was, and we could actually change our detune down to like 2 or 3, and we'll get a very different sound as well. And if I turn off our attack on this one, we get some very dirty attacks again. Now, I mentioned at the beginning this mono stereo deal. So in a stereo effect, we're going to get since we have 2 speakers and it's being spread throughout, the phasing is going to be a lot less impactful. And everyone knows that even though your mix works in stereo, there's no guarantee it'll work in mono. And some people have too narrow mixes. Some people's mixes are incredibly wide. It just depends. But if we sum it down to mono, phase is going to have a much more important role. So that's why my panning is down so low right now. If I bring it up, we'll lose a large impact of the sound, and we'll also get that washy texture a lot more. And that's because even with the attack on, it doesn't impact the phase as much. It's that square wave, I don't know how to sing a timbre like that, but it's that square wave rubbing against each other. But if I bring it down, we get some of those ew, ew, ew sounds at the beginning of the attacks of our notes if we listen. Which doesn't happen with a wide effect. They're completely absent. They're no longer there. And if we remove this and go up, we we get some of it back. Actually, this is the configuration I like the most of all the ones I've done so far. But as you can see, we could achieve a wide variety of effects, and the attack knob can be a really useful knob in determining the style. This sort of gives it it's just behind where the note actually hits, so it creates this offbeat, just barely missing the beat feel. It's just behind the beat. It's still pretty much on the beat, but it's just behind it enough to create a feeling rather than making it feel like a mistake. So anyways, I wanted to share that with you because it's really pretty interesting. This is a phased-based sound, and as we mess with the phase, our envelope, just the envelope I select, is going to be important. And if I were to automate this envelope around, which I can actually do, let's go ahead and for consistency's sake, just have the same pattern repeat. So let's go like this. Let's do an experiment here. Let's see how it sounds if I have my attack here, and then here I change my attack to be very short. And then over here I have the longest possible attack I can have. And over here I have, I don't know, some sort of middle value. So, all right, we're going to make this one because this is already part of this phrase. Whoops, I want that. Okay, so now they're all the same, just at different values. Let's bring this one down to the middle. I don't know what the heck I'm doing that for. Just do that. Okay. So there's some good contrast for you. We hear this one's definitely the washiest. And this one's definitely the most crisp. Like just listen to that. Ba-ba-bum. I quite dig it. That one's more like behind the beat, gives you that offbeat feeling like we talked about. And this one is like a middle in between. I would probably settle on one of the more extreme ones in this case. Besides that, without it, and again, increasing the stereo effect, we could take a look at that real quick. And then you have that as well. And I didn't remove it because, well, then I'd just be playing the same thing 3 times with large panning. So anyways, there you go. Some ideas for you to consider. Maybe you haven't considered ADSR in this way before. When I say in the book that goes with the series, that setting it can sometimes be an art form. This is largely what I'm talking about. This and really specific sound design. Sometimes the ADSR envelope can be quite the thing to figure out because it works with a lot of other parameters and more advanced processing. It affects how things run into other things. You saw how just a little EQ curve change drastically changed how it went through the processing. It completely changed the sound. And I'm also utilizing detune here, and a mix between a saw and a square wave. The sound itself actually is not too complicated to set up if you understand the basic principles. There's also a very short reverb on it. It's barely on. But anyways, that is what's going on. I will go ahead. I'm going to save what I've done to this project file thus far. Subscribe. Let me know if you have any questions about this. Also, be sure to read the book before asking questions. Probably answered in there. And have a blessed day.